white ash makes sense to me why people would fight about it, because there's a unfortunately, in the end user market, there is an economic advantage to having white ash in the same way there's economic advantage to having like a single note, really high THC, which, as adults, we all know that there's a lot more complex experiences to be had as opposed to just a single note THC experience. And so, I understand why people double down. Anytime there's a monetized message, it's easy to double down, because if you don't, it affects your pocket. And so I appreciate that. And so, in that same vein, I like to tread lightly in those areas. I don't want to hurt people's feelings or get people mad, but white ash has been studied for hundreds of years, by the tobacco industry, by wildlife management, by your local fire department. I reached out to a pyrologist because this is a question I get all the time, and I had an opinion about it, but I'm not a pyrologist, and so I reached out to somebody who is, and he explained that the only reason you're getting black ash is because carbon, and it's not fully combusting, and there's different things, whether it's resin, primarily the moisture content of the flower. Those things are, the puff volume. Like, so, tobacco knows that the burn rate and the burn temperature of a cigarette is very complex, just like growing a plant. It's an open system. There's a lot of different things that affect that. And so, again, is it covariance? Not necessarily, because I can take the worst product you've ever seen in your life and get it bone dry, and it'll burn white. I can also give you the best product you've ever seen in your life that's got a little bit of moisture left into it, which is honestly my preference, because I feel like it's a little smoother, just preference. And you'll get salt and pepper. And so, should we be evaluating the quality or the value of that flower based on white ash? To me, is kind of like determining the qualitative, measure of your dinner by looking in the toilet. It's kind of irrelevant to me, and we know that from tobacco, you can spray a cigarette with potassium acetate or magnesium acetate, and it will burn white. It's not because there's more potassium in that tobacco plant. It's because you've sprayed a chemical accelerant onto the cigarette. I don't want chemical accelerants sprayed onto anything that I'm using. I don't want it on my clothes. I don't want it in my food. And so you also, when folks say that it's too much or too little of something, plants that aren't flushed enough, like that's not the answer for sure, because all those other minerals, they burn white. When they burn fully, they burn white. And so it's not too much of something. We know that. And then, as far as it not being enough of something, you're not going to force a plant to take up luxury amounts of, let's say, magnesium or manganese so that it gets white ash. It goes back to that biological objective of the plant conversation. Like, the plant's not trying to get white ash, so it's not going to take up an extra amount of some element that you could spray on to the plant. And then, I will say, and here's where it gets a little interesting, it throws a little curveball, because I have noticed, and I've worked with a grower in Los Angeles for about a year and a half on this. He wants white ash because he can drive a better dollar for his work, and I appreciate that. And so, one of the things that he was having issues with, aside from that, was high chlorides. And so he was getting lockouts and of trace elements at the top of his plants. And I immediately was like, let's look at your chlorides. Sure enough, they were high. we got his chlorides down, and all of a sudden he started getting white ash consistently. Chlorides do not fully combust at any temperature. And so the theory that I'm working on here is that perhaps high chlorides could be an elemental where it doesn't make sense for a lot of the other elements as to why that would have any impact. Chlorides actually does make sense, that if you're uptaking a lot of chloride into your plant, you could potentially end up with a factor that would make it impossible for you to have white ash. And so here it is, something I thought I understood fully. I understood it a little bit differently. I got past the whole, that first step and was like, okay, we understand that now, but here's another curveball. And so, it's I can't help a grower if I don't keep an open mind. And so when I saw that relationship and that was a thing that he was chasing, and now we're able to repeat this over and over again, maybe we are onto something here, so one, I don't want, at the end of the day, I don't think, again, this is not worth fighting about. If you're making more money that way, yes, it is. But it's, for me, it's not how I would judge I wouldn't judge a grower by white ash, and I wouldn't judge a flower by white ash, ever. But I do think the chloride thing is interesting. It's worth investigating.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrowIt15 to save on any of their products.